Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in the Grammar 2 class, welcome to Adventures in Technology. I am going to share this PowerPoint presentation with you on adverb clauses. Okay, so for the rest of the semester, we will be working with clauses. As I mentioned before spring break and all of this craziness hit, there are many types of clauses. We're going to work on adverb, adjective, and noun clauses. Let's review by making sure we know what a clause is. So a clause is a group of words that contain a subject and a verb, and most of the times an object. So the logical question you should ask yourself here is, isn't that the definition of a sentence? Well, that's a good question to ask, and you are correct. However, a complete sentence, as in the SVO variety that we've talked about, is actually called an independent clause. When we are talking about adverb, adjective, or noun clauses, we're actually talking about dependent clauses. Those also have a subject, verb, and object. So to be clear, let's talk about independent versus dependent clauses. Look at this sentence first. I am tired. I'm pretty sure that you recognize this as a complete sentence. I is the subject, am is the verb, tired is the object. A complete sentence is also known as an independent clause. Independent means that it doesn't need anything else. It's a complete thought and a complete sentence. Perfect the way it is. Look at the second example. Because I'm tired. Now, if your friend walked up to you and said, because I'm tired, and then stopped talking, you would be waiting for them to finish their sentence because you recognize that it's an incomplete sentence. Now, an incomplete sentence here, we need to know that it's a dependent clause. It's dependent because it needs something else. It's not independent, it's dependent. It's an incomplete thought and an incomplete sentence. Let's look at this third example. Because I'm tired, comma, I will take a nap. Now, this is a dependent clause, the because I am tired part, with an independent clause, I will take a nap. This together is a complete idea and a complete sentence. And it's a complex sentence, by the way, for those of you paying attention to that. Okay, so subordinating conjunctions. In the previous example, because was the signal word that lets you know more information was coming. It lets you know, typos, it's okay. It lets you know, it signaled you that it was not a complete sentence. The signal word for adverb clauses are called subordinating conjunctions. Okay, so just like if your friend walked up to you and said, because I'm tired, when you hear the word because, you know you're waiting for more information. It signals you, whether it's written down or whether it's spoken to you and you hear it, because I am tired, you're waiting for the second half of the information. These words signal the beginning of a clause that acts like an adverb. Remember, we're working with adverb clauses here. So in case you forgot or you weren't sure, adverbs, and by extension, adverb clauses, answer the questions how, when, where, or why. So if someone says, oh, I'm tired. Why? Because I didn't get enough sleep last night. Something like this. Okay, you already know a number of subordinating conjunctions, like because, since, although, before, after, if. This is not a complete list, but it's easier if you remember these in categories. And this is what I'm talking about with categories. This list, this information, you can find this pretty much everywhere, including on the wiki. So by category, time is one category. Remember, adverb clauses answer the question when. So when did that happen? Well, it happened before spring break. It happened after spring break. Since we've been on spring break, we will do this until, right? So time. All of those words and ... means there's more than that, but this gets you started. So answering the question of when, we have time words, time clause words. Also contrast. Contrast is what I sometimes call an illogical conclusion, right? So although, even though, while, whereas. So even though I studied hard for the test, comma, I didn't do well. That shows contrast. That's not a logical conclusion. Whereas, I'm going to jump here for a second, sorry. The cause and effect, a lot of times, that's a logical conclusion. Because I studied hard for the test, I did well. Okay, the one I skipped was condition. That's if, in case, unless, and even if. Now, some of these words you're going to recognize from the previous chapter we did on connectives. And that's a good thing. That's the reason we jump around the book, to try to introduce certain ideas at certain times, and then we can use them later. This is an example of that. So time, contrast, condition, or cause and effect. And remember, these are answering the questions how, when, where, or why. Okay, let's practice identifying the clauses first. Here are 11 sentences. First one's been done. All they want you to do is, well, you can't underline it because you can't underline it, but you get the idea here. You're supposed to identify the clause. So the example, after the game, we went to the pizza parlor. So after the game is the dependent clause, right? With the subordinating clause being after. Look at number 1. Unless he comes early, I will not wait all day for him. The dependent clause, unless he comes early, with unless being the subordinating conjunction. Number 2, whenever they arrive, I will be waiting for them. Again, whenever they arrive is the dependent clause, with wherever being the subordinating conjunction. So this should be pretty easy. You can go through this. The one thing I do want to show you is if you look at number 10 for a second. 2 people called while you were sleeping. Okay, so the only way this is different than the previous ones is that while you were sleeping is the second half of the sentence, right? And that's the dependent clause. See, it's easy when it's the first part of the sentence because you have your subordinating conjunction and then it goes basically until a comma. But when the subordinating conjunction is in the middle of the sentence, it goes to the end of the sentence and it basically ends with a period. And there's no comma. And that's one of the interesting things about adverb clauses is they can be moved. So while you were sleeping, comma, 2 people called. Or 2 people called, no comma, while you were sleeping. You can move this around. And similarly, number 11, I passed the test because I studied hard. So because I studied hard is the dependent clause, but notice it's in the second half of the sentence. So you don't need a comma. If it started the sentence, because I studied hard, comma, I passed the test. If it started the sentence, then you would need the comma. Okay, identifying clauses is one of the skills that you need for the final exam. Given how crazy everything is, I can't even think about the final exam yet. I assume we'll be back in school by then, but anyway, we'll obviously talk about the final exam more and as it gets closer, but the first page of the final is a list of 15 sentences, and all of those sentences have different types of clauses in them. And so you need to be able to identify the clauses. So identifying adverb clauses is one of the skills you need. And we are starting with adverb clauses because they are the easiest ones, as you just saw on the other page of examples. They're the easiest ones. They're the easiest ones because they all start with a subordinating conjunction. These words, you know what these words are. You're going to become more familiar with them as you use them. But all of these words, subordinating conjunctions, super easy. When we look at adjective and noun clauses, some of the signal words overlap. And so it's not as obvious if it's an adjective or a noun clause, but adverb clause is super easy. They all have subordinating conjunctions and they can all be moved. But first things first, identifying. Okay. The other skill that you need for the final exam is combining sentences. Maybe that sounds scary, but actually let's take a look at this. So number 1 says, I waited for my friend. I waited till he arrived. So the way you combine sentences is you figure out what the point of overlap is. So, okay, I waited. So you could say, I waited for my friend until he arrived. Or if you want to say till he arrived, that's fine also. But you find the point of contact, the point of overlap for the two sentences, and then you basically eliminate it, putting in a clause, a dependent clause, because right now, these two sentences are two complete independent clauses. You need to make one of them dependent. And by doing that, you basically need to add a subordinating conjunction and connect it to the other sentence. So look at number 2. He hid somewhere. His pursuers could not find him. You could go, because he hid somewhere, comma, his pursuers could not find him. If we look at number 3, he was not there. I left a message with his mother. Now, some of you want to put a coordinating conjunction in there. He was not there, comma, so I left a message with his mother. That is a perfectly reasonable way to combine these two sentences. However, we are working on adverb clauses. So because of that, we want to say, because he was not there, comma, I left a message with his mother. And just jump to number 5 really fast. He started early, he finished late. He is the overlap between these two. So you could say something like, oh, and it's a contradiction, right? So even though he started early, comma, he finished work late. So you try to figure out the category of word. I mean, sometimes it will be obvious, but you want to find the category of word that you need to make logical sense. Don't just throw because in there every time. It's not always going to work. You need to figure out what logically connects these two sentences. Okay. I just talked about that. Right. So I think that's a good start. We're like 10 minutes in here, more than that. Anyway, please review the wiki. The wiki page, there's a lot of information on there. There are exercises on the bottom if you want to practice it. But in terms of your workbook, this is chapter 17 in the workbook. And why don't you do practices 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7. I think that's a good start, and I think that will keep us busy for the next week. By the way, the school has officially given you another week of spring break, so this is actually still spring break. But we are supposed to start on Monday, but I know some of you have been emailing me, calling me, texting me, saying, what kind of work can I do? And here you go. So thank you very much. Stay safe out there. I will post this. I'll post this to the wiki right now. Okay. Be well. We'll talk soon. Bye.